Yeah, don't let them grind you down, especially right here in Kansas City. So credit to our new 1st District Councilman in Kansas City, Missouri, Nathan Willett, along with Quentin Lucas ultimately doing the right thing. But if you didn't see this, this news broke last night. A Kansas City man nominated by the mayor to a zoning board has removed that nomination after this individual, his name is Emerson Hayes, responding to news of Israel's siege of Gaza after the terrorist attacks by Hamas, wrote on social media this week that Joe Biden is sending weapons to a regime with genocidal intentions. The only winners will be the weapons manufacturers. That was written by this, I don't know what he is, but he looks like he's, hasn't hit puberty yet. Emerson Hayes, Kansas City guy who the mayor had appointed or nominated to the zoning board here in town. He has now removed and withdrawn that nomination of Emerson Hayes to the city's Board of Zoning Adjustments. Sources at City Hall told the Heartlander, and this was all spearheaded by Nathan Willett, who wrote a letter to the mayor's office saying, we don't want these kind of people on anywhere near City Hall, to be honest. But it's amazing to me. And this guy was one of these far-left activists in town, and he kind of had garnered some attention on social media and progressive circles in Kansas City. And he's somebody who the mayor's office had, by the way, previously nominated to be on this Board of Zoning Adjustment, and now that nomination has rightfully been removed. So I'm glad the mayor did that. It was the no-brainer thing to do. I'm not going to, slap him on the back and say, oh, boy, so great. I mean, it was the obvious thing to do. There was no other choice but to do this. But thankfully, it has been revoked, as it should be. But by the way, that tweet is still up from this guy on his Twitter page. So it's still up there where he's talking about Joe Biden sending weapons to a regime with genocidal intentions. Israel, he claims, Emerson Hayes, has genocidal intentions. Literally, responding to the worst terrorist attack since the Holocaust means that they have genocidal intentions. And you're going to get a lot of propaganda as Israel continues to bomb the you-know-what out of Hamas. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out. You're going to see it on social media. And just know it's exactly that. It's propaganda. Hamas, they're a bunch of cowards. They are evil. They are going to use women and children as propaganda, right? If you see any photos of Hamas members who have been killed behind women and children, know that they use them as shields. That's what they do. These individuals are scum of the earth. They're the very definition of evil. And if that's not obvious to you after the last couple of days, I don't know what is. I don't know how you possibly can define evil after watching what's unfolded over the last few days without pointing to organizations like this, which have been funded by Iran. So when it comes to Harvard, the question I asked before the top of the hour, would you ever send your kid to Harvard? Now, why am I asking that? I don't anticipate I'm ever sending my kids to Harvard. I mean, assuming that they are my own children, they're not getting into Harvard. Sorry, Claire. Sorry, Chloe. Dad's not an idiot, but he ain't Harvard material. All right? So I bring this up because Harvard had 31 groups put out a letter supporting Palestine earlier this week. And Harvard leadership has really rarely spoken on this. We're still kind of waiting for one. They've done like a tepid kind of, maybe we shouldn't have 31 student-run groups signing a letter showing support for Hamas right now. Like, that's probably not a great look for us. But I sat here and I was reading through the story over the last couple of days, and I thought to myself, gosh, I mean, Harvard was always kind of like this place, right? Where you ask any American if their child could get into Harvard, would they want them to go? And 99.9% of Americans would say, of course, it's Harvard. Who wouldn't want to send their kid to the most prestigious university in America? Who would ever say no? Like, leave money out of it, right? Leave cost out of it. Leave that part of the conversation out. If you could send your kid to Harvard and your kid was going to get a free ride to Harvard, would you want them to go? And 99+% of America would have said yes. Today, as you get all the crazy coming out of Harvard, remember, Harvard's the one who had the Supreme Court case come up against it when it came to discrimination against Asian Americans. Thankfully, they lost that case. They were trying to discriminate against Asian Americans in the name of equity, and they lost. Good. Now you have nearly 36 student-run organizations in the last couple of days signing a letter showing support for Palestine, essentially showing support for terrorists. And Harvard, by the way, doesn't really have much to say about that. The only part of the statement that we've got here from Harvard is, we write to you today, this is from Monday, heartbroken by the death and destruction unleashed by the attack by Hamas that targeted citizens in Israel this weekend, and by the war in Israel and Gaza now underway. Wow, really strong statement there from Harvard leadership. It's amazing. We can't find anything approaching the moral clarity of Harvard's statements after George Floyd's death or Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when terrorists kill, rape, and take hostage hundreds of Israelis attending a music festival. Geez, I mean, they were stronger on George Floyd's death than they were 1,000 dead Israelis and hundreds of hostages still out there. Geez, that's pretty amazing, is it not? So I'm asking you at 8:12 on a Wednesday morning, I mean, what if your kid could get into Harvard? What if your kid was just a brainiac and Harvard's like, we want your kid here in Kansas City? Would you actually have that conversation with yourself, or you would say, I love it, son, daughter, that you got in, but dang, I can't in good faith send you to a place like that. You want to talk about indoctrination. I know that there are some prominent, conservatives, Ted Cruz and some others, who have gone to Harvard and, whatever, gotten degrees there. But all in all, I couldn't do it right now. And up until the last couple of years, I'm not sure I ever would have said that. If you told me during the birth of my first two children that they could get into Harvard, I would have said, go. Right? You enter an upper echelon of elites in this country that you can't pay for. But based on what universities like Harvard, they're not alone, by the way, but they're the most prominent. Based on what universities like Harvard stand for, and not just what they stand for, but what they don't stand up against, I think there's a growing number of Americans who, even if their kid had a chance to go to a place like Harvard, they wouldn't send them. And by the way, they shouldn't. 913-408-7710 at 8:14 on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. That's the studio line. That's also the text line here on KCMO. This also on the text line. Pete, I've tried to talk my kids out of going to college at all. Well, I guess that would depend on what their interests are, right? I mean, if they want to be an accountant, if they want to be a doctor, you kind of have to. But I get it. If their skill sets don't require college, you don't need it to make a lot of money. That's for darn sure today. You don't need it to have an enormous amount of success in this country today. I believe that. But it just really depends on what their interests are and where their talents lie. That's what it depends on. 913-408-7710. 8:15 on a busy Wednesday morning on KCMO. What if Wednesday at the end of the hour? Tomorrow morning, we cannot wait to share what is going to be some of the biggest news in KCMO Talk Radio history coming up tomorrow. Throughout the morning, I just make sure I'm not missing any breaking news here in town, as I usually line out the show night before we come on the air in the morning and make sure we've got all the audio cuts that we need. And, John and Mark lend a hand with everything, of course. But I just popped on the Kansas City Star website just to make sure, nothing big happened in the last 15, 20 minutes. I don't know, since I last checked. And the answer is no, because the lead story on the Star website is, this Kansas City musician is black, gender fluid, and beloved. So, yeah, we haven't missed any breaking news over the last 20 minutes. Welcome in. Hope your morning is going well. Thanks for joining us.
I did see Juneteenth is now going to be a holiday in Kansas.
Oh, is it really?
That's interesting.
Oh, is it really? Are they getting rid of Columbus Day, do we know?
I'm not sure about that.
Are they dropping something? Or are we just getting...
Kelly's doing stuff over there.
Wait, so she can just, via executive order declare Juneteenth a holiday?
In Kansas, I guess.
Huh.
It's a state holiday. It's already federal.
Yeah, it's already federal. So what's she, just double dipping, I guess? What does that mean? I mean, they don't work anyway. It's a federal holiday.
28 states and the District of Columbia.
Oh, good. All right. Well, there you go. There's the breaking local news I haven't gotten to this morning. Glad you brought that up for me, Mark. I don't know what I would do without you guys. Yeesh. Top-notch researchers on the other side of the glass. Jeremiah's in Leavenworth. What's up, man?
Hey, Division II, baby, Pitt State Gorilla, top for 20 years, and I give you and John and the rest of the crew there a double A+ and a gold sticker. So,
were you getting those at Pitt State back in the day, a little gold sticker?
That's right. I was harvesting them. I only hand them out once a year, and this is your year, man. Congrats. But what I wanted to comment on is just the tragedy over there on both sides, for sure. And one thing that struck me as kind of sad was there's two things here. The Israeli intelligence before the attack would seem to be non-existent. On the other side of the fence, you have a nation with a poverty level that is intense. It's tightly packed, 2.3 million people in 140 square miles. My point is when Hamas started to set up shop and all of these civilians, soft target areas, somebody had to have seen parachutes. Somebody had to have seen stockpiles of ammunition and supplies, and that there was no whistleblowing going on. And it took me a while to figure it out. I looked it up. Did you know, I did not know this, that 45% of the population there is under the age of 15. So you got a bunch of starving kids over there that are just looking for a bite to eat. And I'm wondering if that contributed to nobody saying anything from the Palestinian side to expose Hamas, that they were getting ready to do this, because anybody with two brain cells would have known this would have been a suicide mission for Gaza Strip once they were done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was just going to be the end of Gaza with the amount of people that were mobilized in that attack. What were they thinking was going to happen in response? And as far as all the BLM stuff goes, this is just crazy to me, supporting basically what amounts to a religion that calls for jihad for anybody that's a non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I love your show. You get a gold sticker. I know I threw a lot of lawn darts out there. Have a great day. Take care, Pete.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Jeremiah. Let's try to go point by point there as best we can. When it comes to any Palestinian whistleblowers, I don't know who knew what, right? I mean, when you have terrorists running the country, they're usually not going to tell the average people what's going on. And here's the thing. Israel was caught off guard. Israel, which has arguably the best defense in the world when it comes to its borders, when it comes to, defending itself from attacks, its draft. I mean, it has an incredibly effective, efficient military. On a per capita basis, it's arguably, I would say, better than ours. And they were caught off guard. And there's a couple of reasons. It's not that they were surprised that they got attacked. It's how they got attacked. They expected it always to be something more like missiles, bombs, things of that nature. But you really had these guerrilla warfare tactics, and we don't know everything yet in terms of how this came to be. But we do know that there's an incredibly effective fence along the border, and Hamas was able to break through that fence. They were able to disable the sensors along that fence. And they were able to break through without Israel knowing. I mean, yes, when it comes to security failures, that's got to be looked at. But it also tells me that this was an incredibly efficient operation. It was not just a bunch of scumbag evil terrorists. This was a funded operation, and that brings us back to Iran. And Iran funding this, despite the fact that the White House claims we don't have any evidence of that just yet. There's been multiple reports, legitimate reports, saying that Iran has been funding Hamas, and it all makes sense. And so you don't get into Israel like this group did, with no forewarning, no alert system on the Israeli side, without a well-funded, sophisticated operation. Somebody's got to fund that. Hamas doesn't have the money to do it. And that's where Israel enters this picture. 913-408-7710. Joel is in Kansas City. Hello, Joel. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. I know that, talking to John there, you had mentioned that you have a niece who is currently at Harvard and is Jewish.
Yes, absolutely. And I can only imagine how, as you mentioned, one or two people that go to Harvard are Jewish. I can only imagine how they must feel in the wake of everything that has gone on there. I suppose you could say they get a little bit of credit for allowing free speech for a change at their university. But it bothers me that we haven't had a stronger response from them. But the tough thing is to say that Harvard is so different from all the other universities would probably be relatively inaccurate. And then also to deny somebody the benefits of what a piece of paper from Harvard will get them the rest of their life because they didn't stand up to the other student organizations that should be condemning what's going on is also a tough position to take.
Yeah, so let me ask you, just out of curiosity, I don't have a lot of time, but have you spoken to her since all this? And since there's been all these student-run organizations showing their support for Hamas, has she said anything to you or the family by chance?
No, unfortunately, I have not had any contact with her since this weekend.
Okay. But she knew what she was getting into going there, and I imagine the whole family did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, there's certainly positives there. There are plenty, in the same way as we have in other universities near here, Jewish-run organizations. They have those at Harvard, too, so there will be at least some support available for her in addition to what has, they're not the only 32 organizations on campus. There are plenty others.
Yeah. Well, Joel, thank you for checking in, my man. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
All right, 913-408-7710. So his niece is there as a Jew at Harvard, and next time I want to hear from Joel after he talks to his niece next. See what the reaction's been like on campus.